Welcome to my story time by mybooksummary.com. Get ready for quick wisdom of countless stories and explore. A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. It was a dark and stormy night. No, really. That's how A Wrinkle in Time starts, and honestly, it's the perfect mood setter for the wild ride that follows. In the quiet Murray household, a teenage girl named Meg Murry sits brooding in her attic room. She's not your typical hero. She's awkward, stubborn, and struggling with school, which makes her a bit of an outcast. But what Meg lacks in traditional brilliance, she makes up for with fierce determination and love, something that will prove far more important than any IQ test in the grand scheme of things. Meg lives with her mother, a brilliant scientist, and her mysteriously missing father, who vanished while working on a top-secret government project. At home, she's closest to her little brother Charles Wallace, a child prodigy with an almost supernatural ability to understand the world around him. Unlike Meg, Charles Wallace is eerily calm and wise beyond his years, but his intelligence makes him even more of an outsider than Meg. One stormy night, everything changes when Mrs. Whatsit, a peculiar old woman, waltzes into their house uninvited and casually drops a bombshell. There is such a thing as a tesseract. Meg's mother goes pale. Charles Wallace listens like he already knew. And Meg, well, she's just confused. But this mysterious statement is the first clue that her father's disappearance is tied to something far beyond anything she ever imagined. And so the adventure begins. The cosmic road trip, meeting Mrs. Who, Mrs. Witch, and the magic of tesseracts. The next day, Meg, Charles Wallace, and their friend Calvin O'Keefe, a popular boy from school who somehow ends up in the mix, venture into the woods, where they meet two more mysterious women, Mrs. Who and Mrs. Witch. These three, Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Witch, are no ordinary elderly ladies. They are celestial beings, ancient and wise, who have been watching over the universe for millennia. They reveal that Mr. Murray is trapped on another planet, held captive by an evil force known as the Black Thing, a shadowy darkness that spreads across galaxies, swallowing planets and civilizations whole. If that doesn't sound terrifying enough, it's also creeping toward Earth. But there's hope. The Mrs. WS offer Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin a way to travel through space. Not by spaceship, but by tessering, a method of traveling via the fifth dimension, where time and space fold over themselves like a wrinkled fabric. Essentially, they're teleporting, but with science magic. With no time to hesitate, the kids tesser off into the unknown. The planet Uriel, a glimpse of the universe's beauty. Their first stop is Uriel, a breathtakingly beautiful planet filled with centaur-like creatures that communicate through music. Here, they witness just how massive and mysterious the universe truly is. But then, things take a darker turn. The Mrs. WS show the children the Black Thing, a terrifying, all-consuming shadow, spreading its evil across space. It is the embodiment of fear, hate, and ignorance, the very essence of oppression and control. Meg, for the first time, realizes the scale of what they're up against. This is not just about her father. This is a battle between light and darkness, between freedom and control, fought across time and space. No pressure, the happy medium, and a look at Earth's darkness. Their next stop is the Cave of the Happy Medium, a strange woman with a crystal ball who is perpetually cheerful, but not necessarily helpful. Through her visions, the children get a disturbing look at their own planet, Earth, where the Black Thing has already begun to spread. But all is not lost. Great warriors have been fighting against this darkness for centuries. Think Gandhi, Jesus, Shakespeare, Einstein. People who have pushed back against ignorance, cruelty, and oppression in their own ways. Inspired but still afraid, the kids prepare for their most dangerous journey yet. Kamsats, the planet where Mr. Murray is being held captive. Kamsats, the nightmare of perfect order. If you ever thought suburbia was creepy, welcome to Kamsats, a planet where everything is painfully, eerily perfect. The houses are identical, the people move in exact unison, and children bounce their balls in perfect synchronization. Anyone who dares to be different disappears. The ruler of this world is IT, a giant, disembodied brain that controls everything. IT doesn't just rule Kamsats, it dominates it, forcing everyone to submit to its will through hypnotic control. Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin make their way to the Central Intelligence Building, where they meet the man with the red eyes, a chilling figure who speaks in a calm, hypnotic voice. He offers them comfort, security, and the promise of no more pain, if they simply surrender their free will. Charles Wallace, despite his brilliance, falls into IT's trap. Believing he's strong enough to resist, he allows IT into his mind. But IT is too powerful. In a terrifying moment, Charles Wallace is no longer himself. His mind belongs to the darkness. Rescuing Mr. Murry, a father found, a battle not yet won. The now-possessed Charles Wallace leads Meg and Calvin to Mr. Murry, who is trapped inside a transparent column, held captive by IT's control. Meg, desperate, watches as her brilliant father, who was supposed to be the one with all the answers, stands powerless before the force of IT. But Meg's father is still a scientist, and he knows one thing. Their only way out is to test her away immediately. In a desperate move, Mr. Murry grabs Meg and Calvin and Tessers blindly, leaving Charles Wallace behind. The planet of Wrinkle, healing and a hard truth. Meg wakes up on Wrinkle, a gray, foggy world where the inhabitants are large, sightless creatures with gentle, loving souls. One of them, whom Meg calls Aunt Beast, nurses her back to health. Here, Meg learns a hard truth. Her father, despite all his knowledge, is not the hero who will save the day. He was never the solution. The only person who can save Charles Wallace is Meg. This is her fight. The final battle, love versus the darkness. Armed with nothing but her love for her little brother, Meg tessers back to Whatsit alone. She faces IT, the giant brain pulsing with control and cruelty, and sees Charles Wallace, fully possessed, staring back at her. IT tries to ensnare her mind, whispering that she is weak, that she is nothing, that she should give up. And then Meg realizes the one thing IT doesn't understand. IT thrives on control, on fear, on logic without emotion. But Meg has something IT can never have. Love. She doesn't try to outthink IT. She doesn't fight IT with reason or science. She looks at Charles Wallace and tells him, "I love you," over and over. She pours all of her heart, all of her fierce, imperfect, raw love into him. And it breaks IT's hold. Charles Wallace is free. The darkness loses. And together, they tesser back home. Final thoughts. There's more than one way to be a hero. Meg doesn't defeat IT with intelligence. She doesn't win through strength or cunning. She wins by being herself, flawed, emotional, stubborn, but filled with love. A Wrinkle in Time is more than just a sci-fi adventure. It's a story about the power of individuality, love, and fighting for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. Because sometimes, the universe doesn't need another genius scientist or warrior. Sometimes, it just needs a girl who refuses to stop loving, even in the face of darkness. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Head over to www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share the magic with friends, and let's grow together through the power of books and interesting stories.